Going. All right, peace. This is Misal Bey, aka Warlock Asylum. I'm on the horn with a great historian, Keenan Booker, also known as the God 720. And this brother's pen is burning. He's got some real, he released a 3-volume set called Kicked Out of Heaven. He has numerous books, recordings. I mean, this guy is a multi-package, man. I mean, he's just doing what you got to do out there, but he's also giving the people nourishment for their mind, body, and soul, and information that's just rarely talked about. We had started a series a couple of weeks back about medieval history, and you can catch it on the OG Den on YouTube. And this episode will be continuing talking about the werewolf. So I'm gonna give the floor to the God 720. He's gonna introduce the subject, introduce himself, and go into it.
All right, well, y'all know what it is. This is Keenan Booker, Um, on the last episode, we ended off, we were actually cut off mysteriously by some unseen hands, I guess. And I was talking about Peter Stump. Peter Stump was the most famous werewolf of Germany. Okay. So he was famous because of his ravaging, his criminal way and mindset, and the activities that were repetitive that he conducted. Okay, and the way he was slaughtered as well. When he died, he was put on a stake with a dog's head put at the top.
Wow.
And there was sort of like an interweaving of the dog's death or the wolf's death. I don't on the description of all the activities that happened state a dog. So that's what I'm referencing it as a
Wow.
dog was not seen as pristine as a
hmm
wolf is, you see.
hmm
So they mixed his soul with the animal's soul, so it would be able to go to either heaven or hell, basically.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
that's deep, man. That is deep. And he was in what time period now? Just to clarify that again.
This was in, I think, the 1500s. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
You can look him up. He has a wiki page and all of that. Peter Stumpf, which
Okay.
that name is also Trump. He was convicted of incest as well with his cousin, who was Catherine Trump. And, nobody knows what happened to Catherine Trump after this scenario. But all other, he had his sister, and I think all of them were murdered as well. You know,
Wow.
convicted of crimes as well.
So there was a lot of mayhem and stuff going on back in them times. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah, sort of like the Fort Hood situation. That is the energy of the werewolf. You know,
yeah, let's
uh,
talk about that for a second because I think you was the one that put me on to that
yeah.
situation in the
Any
news.
situation you see where there's multitudes of bodies showing up and people missing and body parts showing up and nobody's being caught for it. The
Yeah.
energy of that is the energy of the werewolf in the area. You see, that's why I called it an energy that because you have to understand the animal is a symbol of not having control. Their
hmm
ravaging is not based on control.
hmm
It's based on hunger and survival. In essence, an animal, a wolf, a bear, or whatever, they have to ravage in
hmm
order to live, right? So when it comes to the human and the human desire to ravage
hmm
and to do it in the status of an animal is
hmm
also to remove human responsibility and obligation of common courtesy and respect.
hmm
But the obligation of common courtesy and respect may unbalance the scales of the human emotion structure, and the ravaging becomes a little bit more of a desire because it's a built up energy that has not yet to be released. So it
Mm.
being released underneath the guise of an animal removes the responsibility of the ravaging as a human. And this is the format of why we're using a costume and also using it in the status of a werewolf. Okay. Now,
Mm.
um, what else was I going to say? Yeah.
Now, when
Well,
you
that's
speak
right.
about costume,
Mhm.
are we, am I to assume this is like a psychological costume you're talking about? I mean, I can imagine some people may have went out and,
Well, there
whatever.
could be there could be real deep unconscious zones
Hmm.
of the development of man,
Hmm.
where the ravaging spirit and energy of man may have been embodied in this character in age over time.
Hmm.
And due to the fact that it was in age over time, it is locked in your unconscious zone.
Mm.
So everybody has the capability of ravaging.
We'll see.
And this energy will come to the forefront. Say you're walking across the street and somebody assaults your grandma while you're pushing her in the wheelchair.
Hmm.
The werewolf may appear and you may ravage this individual right here for your defense or whatever the case may be. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Um, there's superpower basically locked in the unconscious zone,
Right.
and they show up at time need be. So, for instance, I forgot what it's called, but a mother sees a car landed on her child. She can run to that car and lift the car up
Oh yeah,
in
the
a millisecond.
adrenaline. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
adrenaline, yeah, and all of that, and pull the child from underneath the car and not even feel the fact that she just lifted the vehicle like that. You see what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, we do have that locked in our unconscious zones and they come to the forefront. And the werewolf does show up in a lot of different forms. And one major form of the werewolf is the sexual werewolf.
Hmm.
And you see a lot of that nowadays as well because of the animalism. And the
Hmm.
animalism is definitely seen by the lack of intelligence. The
Mm.
expansion of intelligence is a human responsibility and not necessarily an animal.
Yeah,
So to
gotcha.
be right, so to be elaborate in your communication and how you in your vernacular and how you engage with other people is a human responsibility. So for those who do not know how to talk to a woman and know how to woo her, know how to, and you have to understand also that when we go to the Wolf of Wall Street, that the
Hmm.
gentleman character is gentleman in front of you wearing the suit. But on the flip side of that same coin, he also plays werewolf. Okay.
I see.
Right. Now that's a different breed of werewolf than what I'm talking about with the lack of education
Hmm.
werewolf that goes and ravages women physically, you see, and doesn't have the skill to woo, doesn't have the skill to seduce,
Hmm.
basically. Right. The gentleman werewolf does. And when he seduces, he fully ravages behind closed doors because his ravaging is built upon experience. Now, this werewolf over here, who has the lack of intelligence and doesn't have a communication skill with a woman, has the ravaging of deprivation.
Hmm.
You see, from not knowing and not understanding. You see what I'm saying? But having inclination and having desires that he cannot restrict. If you can't restrict desires, you are animal, you know.
I see.
And right.
So what do you think triggers that? This ravaging. Is there a certain sort of, I mean, I can imagine it's just, you know, different for different people. But what, from your experience and research and history, what would you say would trigger a person to get into this ravaging zone?
Well, which type of ravaging are we talking about? Are we talking about business ravaging, sexual ravaging,
I would say
violent ravaging?
I would say sexual ravaging. I think um definitely, I mean, the sexual revolution was more just about outbursts of affection, but definitely in our times, people are concerned about, where sexuality is going because of so many different platforms that are being made for people to express themselves.
Well,
Um,
okay, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, this brings up a lot of debate in society. You know what I'm saying? So I would imagine that sexual ravaging, I'm not sure how that will be classified, outwardly, because a lot of things are being acceptable that might be ill forms of behavior, right? So how would you say, like, what would be the triggers of the sexual ravaging and that sort of
Exactly.
thing?
The triggers. The
Hmm.
triggers would be your long nose, the snout that
Hmm.
goes to sniffing.
Hmm.
As a
Yeah,
wolf does have a long snout.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
As we have Pinocchio, the hoe, Poke
Hmm.
the hoe,
Hmm.
Pinocchio
Hmm.
has the long nose from the lion.
Mm,
Lion is manipulation.
mm,
Okay. We have Gonzo from Sesame Street. The
mm,
long nose has been with us for a very long time. You
mm,
see, the whole thing about sexual ravaging is that that is a natural inclination. Now, there
mm,
was a time period from what we know in our human history that we didn't have thorough communication, hence
mm,
caveman, cavewoman.
mm,
So, if we look at it then the sexual ravaging or quote unquote rape was a crime or an activity that was occurring before even murder occurred. So it
mm,
would be one of the oldest vices amongst man.
mm.
Okay. So if the caveman and the cave woman had no thorough communication, is this rape?
You know what? I would have to say probably not, because of the fact that the environment and the moral code move consistently together and it evolves, right? Because this is what we're seeing today. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes it devolves, is what we can also see. But why I say that is, I'll give you an example. Like, you look in the news recently, and there's been removal of statues, people who are racist. Now, probably at their time, they were like, look, man, I did what I did. I did a good service to my people. I conquered this land. I got rid of certain things out of the land so that we can inhabit, and this, that, and the other. And now this person is perceived as this. Now you go 200 years in the future, and these people want to remove every media image of a drug dealer out the way, because they said, why would you do that to people? Da, 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 whatever. And so at the time, these things may not appear to be, what it is, but as man, or I guess, as the atmosphere changes, the environment changes, some of these codes change. And I just think it's just, you look at man as a race. Maybe 6,000 years ago, he had the intelligence of like a little boy in a certain way. Now he's at his adolescent stage, maybe college years during the Greek era. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like, so I kind of look at it like, I don't think anyone should be having sex forced against their will, but I don't think that the era of reason had dawned on man, in the scenario that you're talking about. You know what I'm saying? So,
Well, here's the thing:
mhm,
is the reason.
mhm,
Now, why do white people run the world? Is because their women are in agreement with it and they have reasoning, and the women
mhm,
understand the reasoning that our
mhm,
men want to fuck. And we want them to fuck, 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 and keep fucking and
mhm,
ravage.
mhm,
Go ravage, and I'm gonna ravage with you. And through ravaging, we own and we impose fear and conquer.
mhm,
And that's just how it is,
mhm.
And if you do not have the ravaging spirit, then nothing will occur. You will not be able to thoroughly produce anything, you know, because you haven't reached the sustenance. You haven't,
So,
sufficed. Huh?
so do you, I guess what you would say is that the ravaging is part of the predatory nature then.
Yes,
Okay.
man will never be able to thoroughly define rape
Mhm.
because, like I said, did the caveman rape the cave woman? And you don't have nobody, no man has an answer to that.
Yeah.
You understand what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
there's another layer to it is that, the vagina is so good that we can't leave it into the woman's hands of option because she's gonna play games with it as they're playing games with the OnlyFans and all this
Mhm.
shit right now. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing about the ravaging that we see right now
Mhm.
is we were trained with it. We were
Mhm.
trained with it with the Jason Voorhees,
Mhm.
with the Freddy Krueger movies, and the
Mhm.
big titty cheerleader girl running from
Mhm.
the scary serial killer dude. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
were trained with all of that shit in our minds. You see what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? So, you know, I'm not permitting any of that type of
Mm-hmm.
activity because
Mm-hmm.
me, I'm a communicator. I know how to seduce. But
Right.
nowadays, right nowadays, you can't even get a girl in your hands long enough to seduce. You know, they
Mm-hmm.
don't want to even give you their phone number. They want to play games with applications all day. It's because they're scared. You see what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? The whole thing that is really the funny dynamic about it is that all female beings of this planet choose the strongest male. They choose the stronger male.
Mm-hmm.
It is the female, the human female is the only female being on this planet that
Mm-hmm.
chooses the weaker male. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so
It's kind of interesting because listen to what you were saying. I would, from the conversation so far, I would definitely classify the ravaging as part of man's animal nature. I'm gonna tell you why. They did these experiment with these monkeys. You might have heard of giving monkeys money and learning how to use money, right?
are you going down the prostitution one? Yeah, yeah. Okay, go ahead. Yeah,
So,
got that.
I had to read this article 3 times, man. So what happened was, the dude, I guess, who was doing the experiment, he left them alone. But by the time he came back, the monkeys had learned prostitution. Where one monkey was like, "Look, I'll give you some if you give me your money, so I can go get some extra bananas." You know what I'm saying? That sort of thing. So it was really like, it's kind of interesting. You know what I'm saying? So when I hear this, it also makes me think of examples like that as far as man's nature, how far he has evolved versus how far he hasn't evolved. And, it's a part of his nature. You know what I'm saying? So I don't really trip on sometimes some things when it comes to conquest and war, because those were the rules for like man's entire recorded history. Those were the rules, right? Now in the past 200 years, there's the rules have been questioned. And if it's beneficial for people to advance, that's fine. I mean, it should be, that's maybe a strategy in a way. But I also know, like, these rules are probably they're gonna remain in place because it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I
Yeah,
feel
I
it
mean,
be.
there are laws that they're trying to alter. They
Yeah.
don't want men to desire women right now,
Hmm.
and they want women. And the reason it being is because when a woman falls in love with a man, then her voice doesn't hurt. Her voice sort of turns into an echo over time. And if that is to be, and that's why they keep on pumping all these sexual substitutes into society.
Yeah. And I also
Um,
feel too that it's sort of it is sort of also motivated by prejudice, because it's inevitable with the internet and other forms that the world becomes, it is now, without boundaries. There are, I mean, countries have boundaries, but ultimately I could talk to someone instantly. That was never before. A boundary was a real boundary back in the day. As that happens, more and more people come together. You have marriages from people of different cultures, all that sort of thing. So to reduce all of that, let's just keep people in the same block, control their reproduction habits and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? That's just a spin I never really looked at, but it was kind of sparked by a couple of things that you said. You know what I'm saying?
mhm, mhm,
But one thing I did want to touch on, since we were on the topic of the werewolf, and something that we might have not covered before, is you have a section in your book, Volume 2 of Kicked Out of Heaven, on the werewolf and the moon transformation. And I
mhm,
want to touch on this specifically because I know in the craft, like when I was really practicing shamanism, the moonlight, when you initiate it, you really feel it. You feel it like you would feel the sun in July. You know what I'm saying?
mhm.
So you will get this lucidity, you know what I mean, like you're smoked out or whatever. But go ahead, expand on that. Or how did
What
this
page are we on? What page are we on here?
let me I got this up on, it's on page 501.
501. The moon transformation, as I said earlier, that's
Okay.
not what happened. That's not how it began. When
Mm-hmm.
when they said the ritualistic practice of a man turning into a wolf
Mm-hmm.
was, it wasn't done by the moon. Yeah, this is
Mm-hmm.
what you see is a theatrical
Okay.
switch over.
Okay, I see.
Right.
I see.
There's a lot of theatrical switchovers that happened, and this is also with the sexualization
Mm-hmm.
of the werewolf. When you want to talk about the films that came out in the 1920s and 30s, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
There was a Count Dracula. This is the time period where they were putting out the they had the Frankenstein, I think it was. They had a Blob and a lot of other ones.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
Moon came in for theatrical purposes to lessen the violent view and to carry on into Western society. They understood that, you know, we're taking dominance of the world now, and we can't have these type of stories carrying on
Mm-hmm.
when we've done a comparison and contrast of the mythology systems of the tribes all over the planet, and they don't have the extreme ravaging capabilities or the extreme ravaging descriptions inside the stories that Europeans did. So they had to break it down and put up a front line, and that front line is the moon transformation. Okay.
Oh, I
So
see. To kind of cover it up a bit.
right.
Okay, I
And that's
see.
the
I
thing.
see.
And that's why you don't hear the term undead. That's why you
Okay.
only hear zombie or Dracula
Mm-hmm.
or vampire. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You don't hear undead. The
Mm-hmm.
undead is the ancient side of things where those three entities stem from. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And same thing with the werewolf. You have to understand that it's all art, it's all theater, it's all
Mm-hmm.
stage.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna keep these entities, and the reason being is because your mythology systems do have these entities. So with that being stated, these are baseline entities in human psyche, regardless of race.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you got the were jaguar of ancient Maya. You got the, you know, it's all over the place. They got
Mm-hmm.
different stories of man transforming into animal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so because that's the baseline, and the wolf is a familiar character throughout the planet, we'll go ahead and draft that in for the American system when we got the speckled people, so we can create this, so we can solidify the unconscious zones of the human psyche, and we present it through the Halloween, which is and the reason why is because Halloween, through all ancient civilizations and tribes who had systems of high level mythology systems, and this is inclusive
Mm-hmm.
with the Egyptian calendar. On October 31st, the walls in between this world and the
Mm-hmm.
other dimension are at its thinnest.
Yeah, they become
So that's
real.
why they shove so many characters right there, and that's also why you wear a mask.
Mm-hmm.
The reason you're wearing a mask and a costume is to deflect from these characters. So
I
these
see.
characters can see you as a character from their world,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't get involved into your system or try to jump in you, so on and so forth.
It's
So
interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting.
right, so
Wow.
that's why they enforce the whole moon picture. The
Mm-hmm.
moon is lunar, and you know all the sciences behind the lunar, and the lunar is linked with the lupus, Lu.
Mm-hmm.
Lu is linked with the Lucifer, you know, all of that. So
Lunacy. Yeah.
yeah, lunacy, lunatic, you
Yeah.
know, lust, you
Yeah.
know, it's all there. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing, man. It's just so. What other types of werewolf do we see in during the medieval times, or even
Um.
before?
Well, the medieval times and before, when you
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about Rome or Greece,
Mm-hmm.
it's extreme, it's violence. We're
Mm-hmm.
looking at violence. There's
Mm-hmm.
really no story. And then in the medieval, they start to caricaturize.
Mm-hmm.
They start to anthropomorphic some of the werewolf stories and give some humanization to some of them. And one of those stories is a story with St. Patrick. There's another story with a king. I forgot the name of the king, but
Mm-hmm.
it's all in my book. All
Okay.
of those stories are in my book on how they humanized it. And there's
Mm-hmm.
also a story of a benevolent uh, werewolf who was with his wife who was cursed. They were
Mm-hmm.
cursed with the werewolf, and they
Mm-hmm.
asked a passing by saint to rid them of their curse.
Mm-hmm.
And he did so.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the story is in there, and it's funny, but you know, we're we're talking about a zone that could have a large reality to it, and then it could be largely matrix. And I put it in the matrix zone instead of putting it into a real energy behind it that is very thorough and that you can feel. You can definitely feel it in these books. You know, the
Gotcha.
volume 2.
Yeah,
Get it.
definitely. I mean, it shows a blanket. I mean, there is no blanket. It's just straight up what was going on, you know, chronicalizing the events. And that's good scholarship because recently I was asked by somebody as an example, let me give you an example, about Sumer and what, you know, was good. Should they read Zechariah Sitchin? And I was like, nah, man, that dude's garbage because, and I always say this because he was putting in stuff, his beliefs into the work, rather than just reporting what Sumer was doing, right? And so I refer to that's what I like about your work is it's not, you know, people can draw what they want based on what paradigms they're living in, but being a historian, you're just honestly reporting the things that happen without giving it too much you know, too much, no opinion into it. Yeah,
Exaggeration.
yeah,
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 no, I
yeah,
know exactly
yeah,
what you're saying. A
yeah,
couple of people have told me this about my books.
yeah,
I'm not trying to get nobody to join the group.
yeah,
No, I'm not trying to, do none of that. There's a lot of stuff in existence that we don't know what it is.
yeah, yeah.
You can't explain to me what a werewolf was. Now, when I heard about stories of wolves and stuff as I was researching, you got to understand that one thing led to another with all of these subjects. Okay, it wasn't that I just got into the medieval and said, "Oh yeah, werewolf." That wasn't the case. I kept on running into different stories, and when I looked up another story, this story led into a whole nother field. So then it was just all there, and the energy is very thorough, so we don't know if these events really occurred. There is evidence that they did occur, but they're so outlandish, or what has been programmed into our mind as cartoonish or Walt Disney, that we sort of cast it as a falsehood immediately.
Yeah.
Me personally, do I think a man can adjust his whole skeletal into the shape of an animal and act like so? No, I don't think so. Now, there were the rituals to turn into a werewolf. Was there one with? No, I don't think there was one with any specific. Yeah, as a matter of fact, the rubbing of baby blood on the body, I think there could have been one or two cases of that mentioned inside the book, which you have to understand that there's some rituals stated inside those books that can't be reproduced because of chemicals. I mean, because of the elements of what they are. And then at the same time, even if you were to reproduce it, it's not going to be the same mineral structure as it was in those times. So in reality, we don't know if they were at a capability of doing these things or not. And that's the way I present it.
Yeah.
We don't know. We do know that this story of the werewolf, the witch, the undead, even entities like a Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny has been drugged with mankind since age old. Okay. We find these celebrations and similar celebrations in a multitude of different races all across the entire planet in all different types of time periods and languages. So whatever this shit is, it was dealing with the mechanism of the structure of humans, from the beginning. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, from experience that all of them embraced at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
Or part of the design. Me personally, I think it was a software. I think it's one of the softwares that built up the original status of what we want to call, quote unquote, the caveman. A lot of people want to look at the caveman is because maybe he had grunts or carried around a club that he wasn't intelligent. But no, he was extremely intelligent. And the baseline of our corporate world, operates off of caveman intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you see symbols of the bull,
Mm-hmm.
because the caveman was witnessing a bull running around,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
wasn't he? So we have the bull
Exactly.
market
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
We have the bull market now,
The
right?
bull run.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. you see,
Yeah.
you see,
Yeah.
there it is. Then
Yeah.
you have the antelope, you have the
Yeah.
deer everywhere. You
Yeah.
have, all of these animals
Mm-hmm.
are animals that the caveman had to observe
Mm-hmm.
and eventually over time had to conquer. So,
Yeah.
the flaming bush, the story of Moses and the flaming bush talking, that could have been, psychologically the caveman witnessing a lightning bolt hitting a tree for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What type of rage or excitement did
Mm-hmm.
the caveman go through with that? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
A mountain lion attacks you.
Mm-hmm.
What type of ravaging do you
Mm-hmm.
have to do in order to get a mountain lion off of your back?
Yeah.
You
And
know?
also to a lot of the symbolism, like I often think, like, for example, if this world was just to stop and no one was to pick up the pieces, no one knew 1,000 years of future what this world was about, they could probably say, like, hey man, these people worship animals. They had a bull on their hat. It could be like a Chicago Bull shirt. So, a lot of stuff, maybe even at that time, was certain symbolism to represent certain ideas, and that's consistent, because when you look at, and I'm sure you know this very well, I had worked on a text myself that talked about sexuality and worship, the worship of sex, the phallic worship and things of that nature. And I'm looking into this and I'm finding out that they had sexual toys that go back 6,000 years. You know what I'm saying? It
Yeah.
wasn't too much different than what we're dealing with. So it seems like the mental uh, is the same. I think the abruptions, maybe like in world catastrophes, definitely led a shock to the mind to jump into a high survival mode, right? But other than that, everything is operating on a level pretty much that of what we're dealing with now, and the unseen things that we don't understand. Um, we've only been able to gain glimpses of at certain portions of times based on a scattered amount of different people's accounts. You know what I'm saying? But it's never been something that's been merged into our world totally. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I think technology is a way that can happen. Just simply by the fact that, when you look at clairvoyance or clear audio and you hold a cell phone in your hand, like a lot of these ideas have synced themselves into technology. You know what I'm saying? Even though people say that's technology, but like us being able to communicate, hey, I saw a vision, on this tablet, on this rock, and it's a computer. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like, so it's like that sort of thing. Who knows? Maybe they were dealing with that then, and just how they were able to do it was lost. You know what I'm saying? But
Mhm.
yeah, I don't think it was anything um overly ghostly. In some cases it was, but not in the sense of what people imagine it to be. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, those are some real, good points that you brought out there, you know what I'm saying? And that was really good about the moon transformation, because that was one of the things that I will often wonder about with like werewolf films and stuff like that. Now, um, just to tap into your movie going expertise, were there any, before moving on, were there any specific werewolf films that you enjoyed based on your history of your
One thing I
research?
enjoyed about the thing was Little Red Riding Hood is a
Mm-hmm.
werewolf story. Three
Mm-hmm.
Little Piggies is a werewolf
Mm,
story.
mm,
So when I was doing it, I'm like, bing, 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 bing,
mm-hmm.
hitting myself upside the head on how much werewolf you've seen throughout the course of your life.
Yeah.
You can start right there. The
Yeah.
sexual werewolf is in the Little Red Riding Hood. And
Mm.
Little Red Riding Hood, that term is actually a clip. So
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
That's
you gotta
wild.
understand they have compiled some very high levels, especially
Yeah.
on the fairy tales, the fairy tales that we were told when we were young.
Yeah.
You know,
And see,
and
go ahead, brother. Go ahead. Go ahead. Continue.
um, any wolf movie that I mean, I liked the underworld was okay.
Yeah, that was
And
cool.
one reason the underworld, well, one thing that they don't tell you is that a dead vampire turns into a werewolf, you
Mm,
know,
mm,
supposedly. And I think that connection, they showed that a little bit in there. I don't
hmm.
know if they told you that, but
Yeah, I think they had some sort of thing. It's been a minute since I've seen that, but I remember both um both archetypes being in the movie. You know what I'm saying?
right.
And
So man and wolf is like mirror image of night, dog.
hmm, hmm,
You know, that would be the dead side of the night and the dog.
mm,
You see, the
hmm,
vampire and the vampire and the wolf together.
hmm,
Now, when I say vampire, vampire is really the entity that is a merge of the human and the bat.
hmm,
Okay, and there's a lot of different definitions of that with the bat. But
hmm,
when we talk about the
hmm,
Count Dracula is the entity
hmm,
that is the royal
hmm,
class.
hmm,
Okay, now why is it royal? Because Count is it's actually a rank in the British hierarchical system.
hmm,
When they broke down the hierarchy systems from being emperor and marquis and the baron and all of these different ranks, they bastardized them by using them as slang terms and putting them in on other characters when it
hmm,
comes to theater.
hmm. I
You see, they
see.
bastardized the term.
I
Right.
see.
So they put the count on, put the Dracula, and the Dracula comes from Vlad the Impaler, you
Hmm,
know.
hmm,
And they took the Vlad the Impaler entity and then slapped the Draco star system
hmm,
on top of it and created the Dracula terminology. So now we have
hmm,
Count Dracula, and then we can romanticize him since he is in royal class because of the Count word. You
hmm.
see, now
Lives in the
when we keep
castle, all that stuff.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
So when this entity dies, which is not the vampire, the
Hmm,
vampire is the long teeth dude with the long fingers and
hmm,
Nosferatu. You know that movie,
hmm. Yes, yes,
Nosferatu.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um, that's that. That's the vampire. Count
Hmm,
Dracula is, you know, he when he dies turns into werewolf animal. That is, but you have to understand that they're both bloodsuckers.
hmm,
See, so the werewolf is just um, the animal version of the bloodsucker.
hmm.
Count Dracula, vampire, or the zombie are the human forms of bloodsucker.
Mm. Wow, this is some pretty deep stuff there, man. Straight from a historical perspective, it's just amazing to uncover the layers because, we watch these things on television or whatever, and, very, there's no questions asked.
Yeah,
It's just,
you didn't
yeah,
know all of these psychological
yeah,
zones
yeah,
wrapped up into these entities
yeah,
and where they come from and what they represent. Right, and that's what
yeah,
I'm saying.
yeah,
Like, so basically, from everything I just explained, you never really saw a werewolf movie. You
yeah,
just looked at it.
yeah,
You didn't know what language they were really talking inside the film. So
yeah,
when you read these books,
yeah,
go back and watch a movie like Interview with the
yeah,
Vampire. Go
yeah.
back and watch a movie like The Shining. Like The Shining is a form of werewolf. That's
Mm.
werewolf right there.
Yeah,
You know.
Jack Nicholson.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, that was
right.
crazy.
You see
Yeah,
that? You
yeah,
see that? And Jack Nicholson played the werewolf, didn't he?
yeah, yeah. He
In the
played
American Werewolf,
yeah,
right?
he's a stirring character, man, because he played the werewolf. He played the Joker. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Yeah,
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 you have to have a brain for the
yeah,
brain to understand those type of zones
yeah.
and handle it. So, and the Joker is ravaging. The Shining was ravaging.
Yeah.
He played the American werewolf. And then I think we also had the Teen Wolf.
Hmm.
There was a Teen Wolf movie that came out in the 80s.
Yeah, yeah. There was a
Um,
few of them. There was one that came out in the '90s that was really acclaimed. I can't remember. Was it Werewolf of London or something like that?
yeah, I think that was it. I think
Yeah,
I seen that
yeah,
one, right.
yeah, yeah. That
Right.
was I've seen
London,
that
that's
too. Yeah,
Paris.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
huge. I mean, there was a time period where I did like merge myself in the films because there was some esoteric groups that's still out there that would study these things for their psycho-alchemical value. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes even use the metaphors or whatever. But I did like what you said earlier. I wanted to touch on the point because you mentioned about the books and then going back and checking out some of these films. But one thing you mentioned is about the fairy tales with Red
The
Riding Hood
Three
and
Little
stuff.
Pigs. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize, just me myself as a magician or whatever, is that one of the most powerfulest forms of occult in the occult world, by considered by occultists, is fairy magic. So, like to tell a fairy tale is like someone telling you a story about voodoo. You know what I'm saying? I knew fairy magicians, you know what I'm saying? And these dudes was like, look, you know, and it's still, those things are debatable as far as like where that in the reality. I'm not putting it out like that, but just to say that the fairy system is a system of divination. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? And it's like a system that talks about nature spirits and stuff like that. And I've heard of people who've used it, who've seen all types of stuff going on. Like they just opened a door because they thought it was just some stuff that they were reading about when they was a kid, and it was, stuff that they was reading about as a kid. But it's also European folk magic. You know what I'm saying? That it bounces off of. So, you know, um, it's crazy, but we hear these stories and we think like, oh, fairy has become so trivialized with fiction that people forget that it's like listening to a voodoo story or something like that, or a hoodoo story out of certain things. You know what I'm saying? But it's interesting, But the werewolf's character, I think, and for a lot of people, there's a strong curiosity about characters of this nature. Their psychology. How do they reach this certain psychological zone? Because as you said, we just talked about, a lot of times when people are looking at these things, they're watching these things for 2 or 3 hours, and they never question anything that they watch. They're truly being contained. So the idea of investigation is just null and void at that point. You know what I'm saying? And this is how people continue. So when they do see someone like the vampire, like the werewolf, or other aspects that may come out of those dimensions, um, for some, there's questioning on the character, the mental character of how someone could come to this place, or even in true crime, how someone can come to this place. Like, man, this guy did that, this sort of thing. But actually, I guess one of the things that discusses in your books is some of the layers that just exist in human psychology, period, versus what is exceptional. You know what I'm saying? So it's it's crazy. Now, was anybody ever punished, of any punishments for just like, I mean, we know about the Inquisition periods where people were just hung for superstition of witchcraft and things. Was there anyone who suffered any sort of capital punishment for being
Oh,
accused of being a werewolf?
oh yeah, there's
Hmm.
several of them.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's several of them. And werewolfism was defined by just true ravaging spirit at
Hmm.
that time,
Hmm.
and they were also accused of turning into a wolf. And there was some, yeah, those
Well.
cases are there, and they're inside the book. So,
Hmm.
like I started out with this video, Peter Stump was the most famous case to this
Hmm.
day
Hmm.
of werewolfism, and he was he was broken on the wheel, he was
Wow.
quartered, he was decapitated,
Hmm.
and that was how he died.
Wow. It's amazing, man. It's just, this stuff is just too good, and we're going to get further deep into it in the next episode. You know what I'm saying? But I like the werewolf was a character. Originally, I didn't follow. I had a couple of friends who were deep into following the werewolf symbolism, even appearing in comic books and things of that nature, because we also have that character too. What's the character that appears in, as far as the X-Men? Wolverine, right?
Wolverine,
Yes,
yes, there you
yeah,
go. Yeah,
yeah,
there you
yeah.
go. That's the
And
wolf. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and it's just you're right. It's in every law. I think even in Japan they have something called, they have a kami that's represented by a wolf, but sometimes some people believe in the mountains that it was like a witch transformed into something moving around and stuff like that. I think
Well,
it's
the witch's pet
hmm
is the wolf, and you know you gotta. It's funny how we're talking about animal man transformation,
hmm
and nobody looks at the Egyptian walls. All
hmm
the Egyptian characters have animal heads.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So that is also a part of it of understanding the incarnation of animal principles and living your character
hmm
with those principles in unison with your character in a
hmm
sense from that animal. And when it comes to business,
hmm
you know, we have that's where the ravaging of the medieval incarnated into. It
hmm
incarnated into a financial line over
hmm
time. You
I
see,
see,
you,
I see.
yeah, you see, you have to be ravaging in order to get millions of people out of one continent and take them to another.
hmm
You have to have a ravaging spirit for that, brother. I mean, shit, you got to have a ravaging
yeah,
spirit to be building all those ships, building all those chains.
yeah,
You got to be hankering, 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 hankering. You got
yeah,
to be on it. You got
yeah,
to be, yeah,
yeah,
ferocious. You
yeah,
see what I'm saying? You got
yeah.
to be very serious about what, I mean, for me to put out a 3-volume series in the span of 2 years,
hmm
okay, that is called ravaging.
Yeah, that's a lot of information, and these books are like I have them. They're 8 by 11, and they're 500 and 600 pages. So that's a huge effort. I mean, if it was just something that was 500 or 600 pages, half the size, that would be 1,000 pages per book.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? So that's
yeah,
like a lot of information. And even at the 8 by 11 size, the print is not large print. When
right.
reading the pages, it's like really like I think like 11 size font, which is like that's
Yeah.
amazing. You know what I mean? So it's very, very, very deep stuff. I mean, I'm just amazed just some of the stuff that are coming from the discussions. Because one thing I did want to comment on, and it's something that you have mentioned twice, is how these principles and these animal archetypes and fusions amongst man can be found a lot in the financial world. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because I think that if someone reads your books, I would imagine, they would have a different outlook towards the financial world. Y-
Well,
In
it's
the
funny you said that.
psychology it rules that. Go ahead, brother. Yeah.
Okay, it's funny you said that. Well, I
Mm-hmm.
had a book that is put on the back burner that I was going to put out called The
Mm-hmm.
Alchemy of Money, which a lot of what you're stating right here is related to that subject.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot, money controls emotions, the
Mm-hmm.
human emotion structure, and there is a lot about the animal kingdom that is infused in how money operates and moves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's also a couple of fruit in there too, the banana, the cherry,
Yeah.
all of those are related to financial understandings as well. So those elements are extremely deep. And
Mm-hmm.
those are, caveman level understanding. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was saying earlier, the
Mm-hmm.
caveman witnessed the bull. So
Yeah.
the bull, he
Mm-hmm.
had to observe the bull and how the bull mated. He
Mm-hmm.
had to observe the deer standing up on the mountaintop to figure out why is he doing that. So those observations is what is still the basis of our society today. And the werewolf ravaging is definitely a part of that. And where we see that at is with the Wolf of Wall Street. When it
Mm-hmm.
comes to and this element here isn't really the wolf.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the wolf ravages until he's fed
Mm-hmm.
to make sure his squad is fed. That's about it. The true ravaging of in the financial world
Mm-hmm.
is what you see the Godfather is the
Mm-hmm.
representation of, and that's the hog, the
Mm-hmm.
boar, with the
Mm-hmm.
tusks coming out the mouth. You understand? The boar is the only animal that eats to obesity.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Right. So
Mm-hmm.
they come in and they do not stop.
Mm-hmm.
So these trillionaire families and these individuals who are at the top, that's boar's head. That's
Mm-hmm.
a pig's head. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when you see a pig's head, that's a completely different definition than what I'm stating with the boar. A
Mm-hmm.
pig is castrated. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So same with the ox. Whenever they use ox terminology, an
Mm-hmm.
ox is castrated. It's a castrated bull.
Mm.
You see, these are the different. Yeah, you got to watch this terminology because they got a long way they go about this terminology shit
Yeah.
when it comes to these farm animals and how it's incorporated with business
Mm.
or and how they joke around with each other. It is a very hardcore language.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the bull market, what else is in there? They got languages. When it comes to Wall Street, they use the duck, I think. They
Mm-hmm.
use geese. They use, I think, the shrew and the mouse.
Yeah. Yeah. The mouse. Yeah.
Terminologies. Right. You have to understand how these animals operate.
Mm-hmm.
And when you understand how these animals operate and their habit and how they operate with their mating practices,
Mm-hmm.
that's what's incorporated into the system that solidifies our money system and also our social system of America. You
Gotcha.
know,
Gotcha. That's
because
pretty deep stuff. You know.
right, because because the humans, which are smaller than the beast by size, we are
Mm-hmm.
smaller than bears, we are smaller than bison, and that's why in order to build America, they had to do what? Clean out all the animals,
Mm-hmm.
because what happens is that the animals emit more gas and breathe more into the air, and
Mm-hmm.
then you end up breathing all of that, and plus you end up eating on the animal too. So then before you know it, your characteristics and your sexual habits actually follow after the animal's activity.
Wow.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So like one of the biggest animals here in America are bison,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and if you study how bison mate, it's the same activity that we do at our high school proms.
Mm-hmm.
Same activity.
Mm-hmm.
The males hang out with the males, the females hang out with the females in the same area, and then they swim around each other for a little bit, and then they divide off to spots. it's
Crazy.
right. So
Yes. Wow.
right, you got to study a lot of it. I mean, the information is available.
Yeah.
It's available
Yeah.
on YouTube. I'm self-educated with all this, man. So
Yeah.
um, yeah,
That's
that's
deep,
we have
man.
a lot of animal characteristics that are involved with us. And the werewolf, when they say Wolf of Wall Street, that means he's just young, thirsty, vibrant, looking for blood. That does not mean he is a hog. The
Yeah.
hog, the boar, is J.P. Morgan.
Mm-hmm.
That's Chase. That's all that level.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the hogs, right? Those are the stinking, the rotten.
I
You
see.
know.
Yeah. That's wow. That's some pretty deep stuff there, man. But it's definitely beneficial. You know what I'm saying? So, um,
I mean, you can catch all this stuff on the family crest and the heralds. B.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They got what
Yeah.
animals are incorporated into what bloodlines through the heralds and the family crest.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a swan castle. There's a swan bloodline.
Mm-hmm.
There's a troll bloodline. There's a boar bloodline. There's
Mm-hmm.
there's a unicorn bloodline. Like
Yeah.
this shit is some heavy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
It's deep. Yeah. It's straight up. Alchemical and some of it's dark occultism too. But it's interesting to uncover because it definitely helps us to see reality uh, the way it really is. You know what I'm saying? That's the
Yeah.
main thing. So yeah, so we're gonna continue this on. This was really good. This is really good information, man. This is probably the solid movement, and it's gonna get better for all y'all listening out there. Keep tuning in. We're on twice a week on the OG Den. Um,
Okay. You closing out.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Well,
Um,
let me say this one
because
last
I
thing
gotta
about.
get up in the morning early. That's why. But go
Okay,
ahead.
well, let
Yeah.
me say this one thing because I always be hollering out the lone wolf, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And people don't know about the lone wolf.
mm-hmm,
Animals do have their own little social systems, and
mm-hmm,
they do outcast certain members that aren't a part of their social system or operating correctly in
mm-hmm,
their rule and regulation. So
mm-hmm,
there ends up being lone wolves out there sometimes.
mm-hmm.
The lone wolf by physical is actually bigger than regular.
Wait, the lone wolf is what? I'm sorry. Can you say that
It's
again?
larger in its physical size.
Oh, wow, wow,
Yeah.
wow,
Over
wow.
time, I guess because of the mental's intelligence about its environment and its
Mm-hmm.
awareness of its security, they grow larger. Lone wolves are large.
Wow, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. And the wolf size, like, what would you estimate the wolf size at? Because I know wolves are bigger than dogs, evidently, right? So,
Man, there's been some crazy reports of the sizes of wolves.
hmm
Okay.
hmm
Wolves can get up to about 6 feet, 5, 6 feet.
Yeah.
I think standard right now would probably be about 4 feet, or Great Dane size,
Hmm.
probably a
Hmm.
little bit bigger than a Great Dane. You know.
Because I remember we were on the Colorado River, right? I don't know if it was wolves. It might have been hyenas. I think it was
And now,
hyenas.
what I said was the maximum, not the minimum.
Okay. Okay.
The majority of wolves today are probably about regular dog size, but they're
Gotcha.
muscular. They're muscular, and their
Yeah.
skeletal may be a little bit more up
Yeah.
on the adjust point because
Yeah.
of their survival rate.
I
And
think
when
they
they're in the wild.
I think they're like the size of hyenas. I remember we were in the Colorado River, and we were just on a boating exercise, but when we pulled over, you just saw like these high, I guess because some people feed them and different things of that nature, but like we were like, yo, we got to get out of here. And then as soon as we start leaving, we almost had to like start jogging because these things start picking up speed and get on this boat. And I was just like, yo, we out of here. You know what I'm saying? And that was not a pretty feeling. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if they really would have did anything, whatever, because, it was at the Hoover Dam area. But it was just like, man, to see something like wolves or hyenas coming at you or just around, snooping around, nah, that's not a good look. You know what I'm saying?
Let me say this about animals.
Yeah.
Animals understand that you're nature,
Mhm.
just like they are.
Mhm.
You have eyes, you have nose, you have skin, you're
Yeah.
walking. You have
Yeah.
communication, we have
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah.
We are to be able to communicate with each other.
Mhm.
If I smell any fear, anything off of you
That's
that
it.
is not in unison of communicating with me, I will have to strike large defense
Mm.
because you are not in the space of understanding your nature. And due to the
Mm.
fact that you don't understand nature, you are in support of destroying nature.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good lesson right there. You know what I'm saying? Wow, this has been probably it's definitely one of my favorite episodes right here. You know what I'm saying?
Me personally, I've
Yeah.
never had a problem with a dog. I've
Yeah.
never had a problem with a
Yeah, yeah,
wolf. I've
nah,
never had
nah,
a
nah,
problem with
nah. It's just
any type of
interesting.
animal.
Yeah,
You
because where
know,
I'm from, I don't really encounter like these were like hyenas. I don't really encounter them, but I forget what it was that why they came out because the guy was telling us like, look, they may come out or whatever, and I just was like, oh, okay. But when I saw them and how they were moving, it was just like, oh man, I haven't been around this in a while. Like I grew up, around farming and stuff like that, but just to see that side of it, I was like, this is interesting. Let's get back on the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
boat.
No,
Yeah,
hyenas are not an animal. I mean, they're trainable,
yeah,
but
yeah,
hyenas are female ruled, and
yeah,
that's one of the very odd groups
yeah,
of the animal kingdom, especially the dog kingdom. They're not even
yeah.
classified as dogs or jackals. They don't even
I
really
see.
know how they, came about.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's not to say that I'm naive enough to stand around a pack of lions and act like I won't get attacked. No,
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
even when you study the ancient Greek stuff that was going on in the Colosseums, they
Hmm.
said they had to train lions to attack the humans, to fight
Wow,
the gladiators. Yeah,
wow.
because lions didn't attack humans even when they were hungry. They didn't attack humans because they weren't classified as a food in the lion psyche.
Mm.
So during the whole experience of what was going on during the Greek Colosseums is what changed a lot of attitudes with the animal realm, human realm. You know.
I see. That's a whole other discussion we gotta hit
Yeah,
down the line.
that's the origin. That's at the motherboard system of sports.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, I got some of that
That's
data. We
crazy.
can, yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's deep, man. But let me sign this off. Getting off in the morning. It's me celebrate, aka Warlock Asylum, with Keenan Booker, the God 720, and we'll be back at you again on Wednesday, Thursday. So I'm gonna say peace. Have a good night, and this has definitely been a blessing. So we'll catch
Hey,
y'all later.
yeah, y'all get the book. Y'all know where it's at. It's in the link. Go to KeenanBooker.com. All 3 volumes for $100 right now. Pre-orders. Get them because people are already ordering them. They flying off the shelf.
Definitely.
All right.